right? So you're a surgeon, you're a scientist, and also an AI researcher. So tell us a bit about your journey, how you got here, how you started thinking about this problem. And that.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Sure.
It's an honor. And I think it's a really important question because we hear a lot about the existential risk of AI, and we hear about deep fakes, and we hear about all the issues related to employment and those sorts of things. But unfortunately, a lot of the best stories and a lot of the wins that are around AI don't get nearly as much press, even though that's the world that we live in, where you see all these amazing scientific advances. And it's something that I see myself as my goal is to try to advocate for that in addition to being a scientist. So yeah, I started out, in a conventional trajectory of biomedical research, basic laboratory research, basically working on tumor biology. And I serendipitously landed in a brain tumor lab where we were looking at the kind of molecular mechanisms of the development of brain tumors and cancer in general. And then I came into my neurosurgery residency and I realized that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And this was just as the wave of AI was starting to pick up.
Yeah, so what just time frame was this?
Yeah, so this was around 2014 or 15.
Yeah.
And to give people a sense for that, 2013 is basically that watershed moment where AlexNet and deep neural networks, that paper had just come out, and people started paying attention again to deep learning. You know, it had been around, but unfortunately the tools available to train the models weren't very good. And then TensorFlow came online. And that was really the sort of commitment from Google in that case that, this was going to be a big thing. Now, I didn't really have that context. I can tell you, I didn't have the foresight to know that, this was going to be as big as it is now. But, I knew that it was important. And I always had an attraction to imaging. I'm not exactly sure why or why I can account for that, but there was a wonderfully charismatic neurosurgeon in our department named Dan Oringer, and he was developing this technology to help image brain tumors in the operating room. And, I was drawn to that because I did think that we still had this problem where it's difficult to see where the tumor is.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's amazing, something that I certainly didn't know about before I started my neurosurgery training, that it could be so difficult in the operating room, just under ambient light, white light, to be able to differentiate normal tissue and tumor. You would assume that it would not be that hard, right? But it turns out it is quite hard. And what we quickly realized was that, we can take all the great pictures that we want. Ultimately, we have to do something with them. We have to make a decision. We have to make a decision in the operating room about whether we continue with the resection or whether we remove that or whether it's normal. And then once I started learning some of this sort of basic science of machine learning and deep learning, I just fell in love with it. And the way that neurosurgery residency is organized is it's 7 years, which sounds quite daunting, but it's 7 years because you have 2 years of research in that 7-year period. It's 5 years clinical, 2 years research. And I just dove headfirst into it and just really, had that scientific awe moment, and haven't looked back since.
Yeah.
And the amazing thing is that we published some papers early on, but as we're doing this huge wave came up all around us. No one could have predicted the success, not only computer vision, but in language. I mean, just to see how it's permeates our world now, and how we're still seeing how this is going to really touch every aspect of our lives. It's really amazing to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I want to dig a little deeper into your background, right? So, I mean, clearly you're in a great place where the scientists and surgeons and machine learning researchers,
right,
MICD, and all of these things floating around. But I think it takes a special background. So can you walk me through your undergraduate degrees and, that journey?
Yeah.
Just for me and for others to figure out, what made this actually possible other than timing and placement.
Right. Yeah. So, to give everyone hope out there, I had no computing background in undergrad. I studied philosophy here. And interestingly enough, though, there's a strange connection in that, I was focused on philosophy of language and epistemology and the philosophy of mathematics. And we were taking discrete math courses, but they never wanted to call them discrete math, right? Because then people would go to engineering. But we were learning, all of these things that you would learn in kind of the first year courses that you would take if you were preparing to learn about computer science. But of course, they never would want to call it that. So there was this strange connection that I was getting. And again, it just kind of plays to this multidisciplinary aspect. But in that background, I think helped me a lot too, because it gives you a sort of framework to be able to think about relationships between the human mind and between artificial intelligences. And that's something I've kind of come to appreciate more and more as I've gotten older and older. But again, it was not on my radar. I didn't know any programming at all. And then I think I was always, as a clinician, we're usually taught to understand bioinformatics and biostatistics. So I knew a lot of the classical statistical computing software. And then once I, discovered Python and all these what are and those things, I was like, oh man, there's a whole world out there that does this for a living. And again, I thought that, even at that time, you could sense the digitization of the world.
Yeah.
We were converting to electronic medical records. All the imaging that we do in the hospital is all digital. You think of the old light boxes for the x-rays, that's all gone. Even pathology slides, it's all becoming digitized. So I even, we're not talking about that long ago, but that I had this sense like this was going to be important. And, I came to it in my adult life, and just, for anybody who's interested in these areas, you can do it. You really can do it if you commit to it, and it's really about finding that internal drive and that spark to be able to want to pursue it. And luckily, Michigan is a great place for it too, because my mentors, but also the chairman of my department at the time, even she sensed that this was going to be important, and she was like, "You go for it." She was a cheerleader for me. So,
and to the extent that you have an appointment in the Department of Computer Science, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. And I worked, again, a testament to the University of Michigan. I just cold emailed a faculty here at the University of Michigan, Hong Lak Lee, who was just really a world-renowned researcher in deep learning. For a little bit of context, he was I think one of the first PhD students for Andrew Ng, who's a giant in the field. And I just emailed him and said that I would love to be able to meet with you and discuss these topics. And, bless his heart, he agreed. And we've been working together ever since. And, I'm not convinced you could do that at any university and get a response. So the fact that he was so welcoming is something that I'll always remember and try to pay it forward when I get messages from students.
Yeah, that's really good.